Still, I'm joined today by Maitane Olavarria, who is Secretary General from SBS. SBS, you'll hear all about it in a minute. Today, we're going to be discussing what it means to be an inclusive system. Earlier in the training, you've heard me speak a lot about gender, inclusiveness, and diversity. But of course, inclusiveness in the context of the European Standardization System, it's much broader than that. And it also concerns stakeholders' diversity. And for that, we have different mechanisms in place. And one of them is the famous collaborations we have with the Annex 3 partner organizations. And for those who don't know what is hidden behind the Annex 3 organizations, this will all become clear to you very soon. We'll present to you who they are, what they do in the system, what are their rights and obligations, which of course is very important for you to know as technical body officers, and a little zoom in on the specific opinion mechanism that some of the Annex 3 have the rights to use. And then of course, a guest presentation from SBS given by Maitane. Before that, because I knew I was the last one today, Slido question, yay! So if you can all take your phone or your computer that you have in front of you, and you can go on slido.com. I can hear laughs in the room, that's good. And online, please do it too. So slido.com, or you can also scan the QR code that you have in your screen. And then you'll be asked to add the code of the event, which is inclusive TBO in one word, inclusive TBO. And then normally you should have access to a question. So the code is inclusive TBO, which is here on the left of the screen. And then I hope it works. And you can enter the answer to the question, what does inclusiveness mean to you in the context of standardization? And I can already see some answers. So basically really think of what you already know from today, right? And what we want to hear from you is, what do you think when you hear the word inclusiveness? Maybe I'll put back the slide 1 second for everyone to have time to go back. I'm too awake. So slido.com, and then inclusive TBO is the code. So the question is still, what does inclusiveness mean to you in the context of standardization? And I'm going to try to share this. I can see a lot of answers. That's great. I will show them to you very soon, but while you're still answering to the questions, I'm going to go on. Thank you very much for your proposals that's coming in. Thank you very much. So we've already mentioned several times today, so by now you're experts of our SEN and SENELEC strategy 2030. You already know by heart that the goal 4 specifically is dedicated to the inclusiveness of the system, making sure that we further strengthen our values of being open, inclusive, and transparent. And of course, for this, the participation of societal stakeholders and of SMEs in our system is absolutely important and crucial to ensure that our deliverables reflect not only state-of-the-art technologies, but also societal and SMEs needs. So you're very well aware, coming for some of you from national standardization bodies and national committees, of our national delegation principles. So we at SEN and SENELEC have complementing partnerships with specific European organizations that represent societal stakeholders' interest, as well as SMEs' interest, European level, very much complementing the collaborations happening at the national level. Of course, more recently, the European Standardization Strategy that was published in 2022, so earlier this year in February, reinforced the commitment of SAN-SANELEC and their members towards an inclusiveness, towards an inclusive system. And before that, the very famous European Regulation 1025, which I'm sure you also heard many, many times today, on European standardization, further reinforced the importance of inclusiveness. And this is where the famous Annex 3 organization label, I would say, comes from. This is where the 4 organizations that represent specific voices in the system have been defined. Those 4 partner organizations, those 4 Annex 3 organizations are here in front of you. So that is Annex, representing consumers, ECOS, representing environmental interest, ETUC, which is representing workers and trade unions, and SBS, which is representing small businesses in the standardization system. So Maitane, please tell us more.
Thank you, Deborah, and thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to tell you a bit more about small business standards. I'm sure being technical body officers, you might find sooner or later one of our experts in your technical committee. So small business standards, we are a relatively young organization, so we were founded in 2013. We are, as Deborah said, one of the Annex 3 organizations, and basically our aim is, first of all, raise awareness among SMEs about the importance of standards, why standards are important and is an issue that they should not ignore. Also to represent their interest in standardization at the European, and also we work with ISO and IEC. So if you are also involved in international technical committees, you might also find some of our experts there as well. And just for you to know, so we are an association of associations. So we have as members 21, but in January we will be 22, European and also some national associations, both representing SMEs in general, but also specific sectors. And we represent around 12 million SMEs. So regarding our activities, what do we do? So I mentioned our main aims are to raise awareness, to represent SMEs, to motivate them to get involved. So I would say that we can divide our activities, I would say, in kind of 3 blocks or 3 main areas. So at the technical level, one of the things we do is to fund experts. SMEs have less resources than bigger companies to get involved in standardization. Going to technical committee meetings also requires money to travel, time. So one of the things we do is to support the experts financially so that we cover their costs so that they can participate and contribute to the standardization work. We also provide, or we have developed tools to support the consideration of SME needs in standardization, and I will talk about that a bit later, so I won't go into details. And apart from financial resources, and I would say as important or even more, I would say, than financial resources, is also important that SME experts also get support with their questions and training so that they also know how standardization works, how they can contribute in an effective way. So this is also part of what we do. And we also help the support and uptake of relevant standards as well. I will explain later a bit more how we do that. At political, what we call political level or policy level, so we work in technical committees, but we are also involved in the SEN and SENELEC technical boards as well, and also the policy groups. So we also try there to ensure that let's say, the rules in general of standardization and participation also consider what are the needs and are favorable for the participation of SMEs. We also participate in Commission expert groups like the Committee on Standards as observer. That is, as you might know, the place where standardization requests are approved by member states as well. of course, part of what we do, and Deborah knows that very well because today you got a batch of those. We also provide recommendations to SEN and SENELEC on what can be done in order to improve participation of SMEs in general. And of course, a big part of what we do, as I said, is awareness raising. So we organize events, webinars, and we also have brochures and publications to help SMEs to get further involved. Regarding experts, I wanted to mention that at the moment we have 67 experts that are involved in SEN. They're mainly in SEN, ETSI, in that order, then ISO, IC, and SENELEC. And these are from different sectors. As you know, SMEs are everywhere. So we have experts in construction, personal protective equipment, consumer products, lifts, many sectors, digital technologies as well. And basically, we choose these experts on the basis of open calls that we launch every year over summer. Any expert with an SME background, of course, we check the SME background and the expertise is able to apply and might be elected as an SBS expert. We are there to represent collective SME interest, in the sense that the experts we support are not there to represent the interest of their company. We basically fund them and support them to represent the position of European SMEs in general. And in order to help them to do that, we have a series of working groups that you can see on the screen, where we discuss with our members, other experts in the area coming from SMEs, the important points that should be brought to the technical committee. So just for you to know, when you have an SBS expert and is expressing an opinion in a technical committee, it's not his own personal opinion, is the opinion of a group and a consultation among SBS members and beyond SBS members as well. And also, so we have a series of standing groups that are the ones that you have on the screen, but also on some topics, we also create ad hoc groups whenever relevant. Like, for example, we have another group on services following horizontal service standardization at the moment. And regarding publications and awareness, so just to name a few, so part of what I mentioned that we do is to help the uptake of standards. So in some cases, we also have developed practical guides in order to help SMEs to basically know better how to go about the implementation of some standards, or, for example, mentioning like this one on industrial Internet of Things, to help them understand which kind of standards they might need in order to go into some specific area. And of course, we have many events on specific topics as well. In the screen, you have one of the latest ones where we try to raise awareness as well among SMEs on the importance on accessibility and on the future standardization work on that area. And I think, Deborah, the next one is for you to continue.
So you're really busy at SBS, which I think is a common thread between the four Annex organizations. And you've mentioned, of course, that you're very active in our technical committees. You've given a lot of examples for this. But what's really interesting in our collaborations between SEN-SENELEC and the four Annex organizations is that because they are what we call partner of category 1, that is defined in our guide 25, yet another guide for you to get familiar with. Not only can you and do you participate at technical level, but you're also providing really interesting inputs and advice within our governing bodies. So you really have this dual role of communication with us and collaboration with us at both levels. You've also shared your numbers of how many TCs you're involved in, but I think just to give you a better idea of how involved those four Annex 3 organizations are within SEN and SENELEC, this is the latest numbers from 2021 of how many technical groups Annex 3 organizations are participating in. I'd have, as a disclaimer, this includes TCs, SCs, working groups, but also some miscellaneous groups such as sector fora, coordination groups, and also a few advisory bodies that you may be familiar with. So just to see that their participation is very present, very important, but also it varies from one organization to another, of course, depending on their resources and power. And also an important thing to note is that all the Annex organizations have signed specific partnership agreements with SEN, but only Annex, ECOS, and SBS have signed a partnership agreement with Senelec as well, just because of the nature of ETUC's scope of activities. At technical level, and of course that's the most important part for you to know, these are the rights of Annex organizations within technical bodies. Just to note that the part on the slides that are orange are only applicable to those 4 Annex III organizations, whereas other partners within our system only have the rights in blue. So today we're very focusing on the orange part. So the 4 organizations that we've mentioned have access to working documents, can participate in any technical committees, and the specificities of Annex II organizations is that they can participate without restriction. So there's no need for a formal request to the TC for them to be able to participate. Once given access upon their simple request, Annex III experts or observers within TCs, just like any other partners in a TC. And just like any other partner in a TC, they are experts like anybody else around the table at working group level. They also have a right to comment to draft standards. All partners of SEN and Senelec have the right to standard at inquiry level. And external organizations also have the additional right to comment not only at inquiry level, but also at formal vote. And now only discussing about the societal Annex organization, so that is Annex, ECOS, and ETUC. So SBS doesn't have that right today, is the opinion mechanism. So that's in addition to commenting. Those 3 societal Annex III organizations have the right to formulate a formal opinion on a draft standard, again, at any stage of the draft. This is an additional right that was given to societal representative organizations within SEN and Senelec to further strengthen their voice within the system. It's important to know that the opinion that they formulate does not affect the outcome of the vote, of course. Also doesn't affect the national delegation principle, because it's very much an additional opinion given at European level. It is expected for societal Annex III organizations to use this right positively. It is encouraged for them to use it when they are actively participating in TCs. And I see that most often than not, they're not an Annex organization, a societal Annex organization will formulate an opinion in addition to an official comment that they would have already sent to the TC prior to this. So it's very much to enhance their opinion on the topic, like the name of the mechanism. An opinion can be either favorable or not favorable, and that's kind of it. They can give a little explanation about why they believe this is a favorable draft or a non-favorable draft, but again, most of the time it's not a surprise for the TC because it is very much in line with the comments that you have already received within the drafting process. To give you an order of idea of how big this is, so this right has been granted to societal Annex organizations since the 1st of January 2017, and since then, so for the last 5 years or so, they have formulated 322 opinions between the 3 organizations. Also, most of the opinions are favorable. That's about 75% of them, a little bit more. I think, yeah, and as I think I've already said that, but I think it's important for you to know that the opinion mechanism is expected to be used in a constructive way to really allow societal stakeholders to pass a clear message on areas of improvement which make our system, of course, better. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this. How I think we'll take question at the end if that's okay. Thank you. Remember it. This is very detailed. I'm not going to go over it now because I'm sure your head is very full of this, but so you know where to look for. If you are part of a TC that receives a opinion, there is a whole guidance document available on Sandboss and Semicompatibility. The links are on the slides. But basically, to give you an overall idea, the SSOs, so that's the societal stakeholders organizations, are sending their opinion to us. For the moment, it's a manual system. We are about to digitalize it, hopefully in 2023. Then we forward it to you as TC secretaries and TC chairs, so that will arrive on your desk. And then you will be expected to upload it on the e-committees tool or the collaboration tool. And then you will be expected to inform as TC secretaries the TC for consideration. The idea, once it will be digitalized, is that all of the opinions will be collated in together with the comments in the ballot results. So it'll be much easier, but we're still working on this. And then, of course, as the TC, you're expected to agree on the follow-up and then come back to your CCMC, so Centralized Management Center point of contact, to give the feedback of the TC. That's to say that it's going to be digitalized soon, so it's going to be much easier on all of us. It's a very long process. It's an important process for the inclusiveness of our system. For the moment, it's a little bit burdensome, but we are working on making it easier on everyone. With this, I would like to invite you, Maitane, to share a little bit of best practices of SBS in our system.
Well, I mean, this second part of the presentation, first of all, I wanted to start with a couple of examples to also show you that the fact of having an SBS expert is also an added value for the technical committee, because if we think about it, after all, if a standard meets the needs of SMEs and is easy to implement for an SME, should be also easier to implement for everybody. This is just a couple of examples of what our experts have contributed to or helped to achieve regarding standardization. So the first example is not so much of a technical committee, but I think it will probably have as a result a proposal to develop a standard, most likely next year. So SMEs are very active and actually in the area of personal protective equipment. There are many SMEs that also manufacture this kind of products, but there are also many SMEs that actually offer these products as a service, in the sense that there are many SMEs that rent personal protective equipment for firemen, for hospitals. They make sure that they clean it, they repair it, and they actually also contribute to a more circular economy, in the sense that they help to have the products longer in the market. So circular economy is actually an important topic for SMEs in this area. And this is why we have an SME expert that until recently, until May this year, she was chairing the topic group on sustainability of the Sense and Elect Sector Forum. And also with her and other experts within the sector, we are currently working on a proposal for an eco-design standard for PPE garments, so that we can, for SMEs, it's important to know the characteristics of these products so that they can basically keep them in the loop as long as possible. So this is just an example of a contribution of one of our experts. And the second one is our expert that is in the technical committee, Senate Technical Committee on Furniture, and it's in relation to a standard on testing of connectors for furniture. So basically, these things that would make your IKEA furniture, hopefully it won't be IKEA, but it will be from an SME, much more stable. So there was a standard to do it basically to test these connectors. And thanks to the suggestions of our expert, the standard does not only include the test itself, but also a reference connector, which is important because not all SMEs have the capability to or be testing the connectors themselves, and they basically just trust the information of the supplier, and thanks to this reference connector, they can basically compare it with the reference connector without having to test it and have an idea of how or what is the quality of the connector. So this is just to show you that our experts are also there to basically provide input and help the standards also to have added value for SMEs. Now, Deborah mentioned 100, I noted it, 84 technical committees, working groups. I mentioned we have 67 experts, so we are trying to cover a lot with not so many experts, but obviously it's difficult for SMEs to be everywhere. And that's why SEN and SENELEC also has a guide, Guide 17, which I would recommend you to read and also to promote among your the experts in your technical committee or working group. The guide is available also in different languages, and basically what it's doing is to provide guidance to those that are writing standards on relevant issues that need to be considered when drafting these standards, so that the needs of SMEs are considered, and we make sure that we have standards that help SMEs and help them to grow rather than create obstacles or difficulties for them. So the guide is relevant for working group, technical committee, working group experts, technical committee members, national mirror committees. And basically it provides a series of advice, I would say, in relation to the different steps in the development of standard, from the new work item until considerations regarding any need for transitional periods, etc. So the nice thing about the guide is that also you have a checklist at the end that helps you with some questions in relation to these phases and different aspects. So the preparation of the standard, the structure, etc., and the final review. So my advice is please promote this, use this. I think it's important. But I also wanted to present to you something that we did in SBS a couple of years ago, and we are trying to promote, which is basically a tool to try to basically translate the principles of this guide into a tool and a series of questions that you can follow in order to see whether the standard you are developing is SME friendly or compatible or not. So this is the Semicompatibility test, and as I said, the objective is to try to provide an overall score or perception of whether the standard that a technical committee, for example, is developing considers SME needs, and it basically ranks the standards into three broad categories, so good, average, or poor. And for us, this is a starting point to basically try to improve the standard if there is a need to improve it. And the idea as well is to modify the test if needed with the feedback as well of users. So the test is intended for people with experience on the area where the standard is being developed, can be applied for any stage of a draft. But I would say that, of course, it has much more sense to do it during inquiry so that you can implement any improvements that are needed. Or, for example, when you are reviewing a standard before you start the review process, well, the revision, if you decide to, the review and the revision, if you decide to revise it. It's basically an online form that is publicly available. So you will see the link later. Anybody can access it and use it, and has 11 criteria with 21 questions, which are related both to the text of the standard itself and also the possible impact that that standard can have. And it has a series of scores. And of course, I think what is important to mention is that there are some questions or criteria that have a bigger weight than others. For example, when we are talking about market access, if there are issues regarding market access, has a bigger weight than other criteria. I'm not going to go through this because that would, I think, just finish with you and kill you. Just for you to see, those are the criteria. There is a webinar that we did, I think, in 2020, end of 2020, where you can have a bit more details. So I think I will spare you this part. And just for you to see, so basically these are the 3 scores that you will get from 0 to 33%. Basically the standard is poor and really needs to be improved. 34 to 66%, it should be is average, so it should be improved, but it's not as urgent as those that are between 0 and 33. And between 67 and 100% is a good standard. So probably there is not much need to modify it. And there is the link where you can find it. And as I said, this is a test that is supposed to be there to help you and the experts developing standards. And if there is feedback, we are more than happy to receive it. And I think I will let you finish and keep the audience awake until the end, hopefully.
I'll try my best. Thank you. I mentioned before that European partners, such as the Annex organizations that we're discussing today, not only have the rights to participate at technical level, but also at the strategic level within SEN and SEN-like system. I think it's still important for you to know that we have dedicated groups for both SMEs and societal stakeholders. So we have the SME working group where SBS is participating, as well as all of our members from SEN and SEN-like, and we have the societal stakeholder groups, which is a group, a high-level group with ECOS, Annex, and ETUC. Annex organizations also have observer seats in our technical boards that you are very familiar with, but also international task forces. They are invited to our general assemblies as well. They can have they have a seat within our SEN and SEN-like policy groups. So they're really, really integrated at all levels of our system. They also have dedicated contact points within the SEN SEN-like Management Center, which are also the contact point for you if you have any questions linked to Annex 3 organizations' rights and obligations within your TC. And then, of course, we collaborate on a very broad array of actions and messages. Could be policy, could be education on standardization, webinars, as you mentioned, Maitani, etc., etc. One of the tools that I like to highlight, the first one is always SEN SEN-like Guide 17 on SMEs, but Maitani did that for me. So the second one is it's an e-learning tool that is again available for everyone. It's called Standards for All. It was developed together with the 3 societal Annex organizations, and it really gives you a very, very user-friendly overview of how societal stakeholders are interplaying within the standardization system, not only at SEN SEN-like level, but also at national and at international level. Probably you know everything that has to be known now about the European Standardization System, but maybe if you have new experts within your TCs that are a little bit lost, this is always a really good start generally on the standardization system. Of course, it has a little focus on the societal stakeholders' participation. This is again a slide just for you to go back to later with all the important links. The Guide 17 is mentioned, etc., etc. We don't have time for a Slido, so don't worry, I will not make you rush through it, but this is my takeaway slide, and then I'll take the question that was there later. We have 4 so-called Annex 3 organizations that represent SMEs, but also societal stakeholders in our system, Annex, ECOS, ETUC, and SBS. They have the same rights as the SEN SEN-like European partners defined in our Guides 25, but also more. For example, they can comment both at inquiry and at formal vote. For the societal stakeholders Annex 3 organizations, they also have the right of opinion. And then at the working groups level, they have the exact same right as everybody else around the table. If I haven't said that 17 times today, inclusiveness, transparency, and openness of the system makes better standards, and I hope you're convinced now. And of course, you don't have to invent anything. There are many, many materials that we've presented to you today and tools that are at your disposal to help you in your role as a technical body officer. So if you have any questions, I hope that now you know where to look for it. If you have still any questions, we're very happy to answer to them.